A snake just bit you. Not the idea of a snake bite, an actual one. You felt it before you saw it. 2 points of pressure on your ankle, sharp and fast, like a stapler fired into your skin. You look down. A Russell's viper is already disappearing into the grass. Brown, patterned, completely uninterested in what it just did to you. You have your phone out in 4 seconds. You are searching snakebite what to do before the puncture marks have stopped bleeding. Within 8 minutes, an ambulance is on its way. Within 40, you're in an emergency room where a doctor is calculating exactly which antivenom to administer based on your symptoms, your weight, and the specific venom profile of the species that bit you. You will probably survive. Not because your body handled it, because a system built over 2 centuries of trial and catastrophic error handled it for you. Now remove all of that. Remove the phone, remove the ambulance, remove the antivenom, the hospital, the doctor, the road the ambulance drove on. Remove every piece of infrastructure that stands between a snake bite and a death sentence. You are still in the same grass, the same viper, the same 2 puncture marks on your ankle. You are now somewhere in the Deccan Plateau. It is roughly 8000 BC. And the question that should be making you genuinely uncomfortable right now is this. What did people actually do? Not what stories say they did, not what myths describe. What did a real human being with a real snakebite in a real ancient landscape actually do to survive? And how often did it work? The answer is stranger, darker, and more human than anything you have been told. And by the end of it, you will never look at a patch of tall grass the same way again. Let's talk about what snake venom is, because most people have it wrong, and the wrongness matters enormously for understanding what ancient humans were up against. Venom is not one thing. It is a category containing dozens of different weapons depending on which snake produced it. The Russell's viper that just bit you, one of the 4 species responsible for the majority of snakebite deaths across South Asia even today, carries a hemotoxic venom. It does not kill you quickly. It dismantles your blood's ability to clot, destroys tissue at the bite site, shuts down your kidneys, and drops your blood pressure over a period of hours to days. You do not feel the worst of it immediately. You feel it coming. A cobra carries a neurotoxin. It crosses into your nervous system and begins switching off the signals your brain sends to your muscles. Breathing becomes an effort, then it becomes a struggle, then it stops being possible. A crate bites at night, often while people sleep, and its neurotoxin is so gradual that many victims do not realize they have been bitten until paralysis has already begun. By morning, they cannot move. Many do not wake up at all. 3 completely different mechanisms, 3 completely different timelines, 3 completely different things happening inside the body that require 3 completely different responses. Ancient humans had none of the tools to distinguish between them. No blood tests. No species identification guides. No toxicology. They had a person on the ground, a wound on the skin, and a clock running. Think about that. Not as a historical curiosity, as the actual situation facing a real human being whose child, whose spouse, whose parent had just been bitten by something that may or may not have been venomous, because not every snake is, and not every venomous bite delivers a full dose, with no way to know which situation they were in until the symptoms either appeared or didn't. That uncertainty alone killed people who might otherwise have survived. Now here is where things get genuinely strange, and a little humbling, honestly. Ancient humans across multiple continents independently developed responses to snakebite that fall into roughly 4 categories. And when you look at them through modern biology instead of modern condescension, some of them are more sophisticated than they first appear. The first response was suction. Cut the wound, draw the venom out. It is the image most people carry from old films and older novels. A frontier doctor slicing an X across the bite and putting their mouth to the wound. It does not work. Modern toxicology has established this with enough certainty that the American Red Cross removed it from their guidelines in 2002. Venom enters tissue and bloodstream faster than suction can retrieve it. The cutting creates additional trauma. The mouth introduces bacteria into an already compromised wound. You are making 3 problems to solve. 1, and yet this method shows up in medical texts from ancient India, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, independently, across populations with no contact with each other. This is the part worth sitting with. When separate civilizations arrive at the same wrong answer without communicating, it usually means the answer looked right from where they were standing. Suction produces visible results. Something comes out. The person doing it feels like they are doing something. And in a situation where doing nothing felt like abandoning someone to die, doing something, even the wrong something, carried its own logic. Did you know? A 2002 study published in the Annals of Emergency Medicine found that mechanical suction devices marketed for snakebite first aid removed less than 0.02% of injected venom in controlled tests. Less than 0.02%. The devices were sold across the United States for decades. Ancient humans cutting the wound with an obsidian blade were operating on the same flawed premise as a product sold in American outdoor stores in the year 2001. The second response was plant medicine, and here the story becomes considerably more complicated. Let's go to the forests of the Western Ghats in India, roughly 3,000 years ago, because this is where the story stops being about failure and starts being about something that should genuinely change how you think about ancient knowledge. The Charaka Samhita, one of the foundational texts of Ayurvedic medicine compiled roughly 2,000 years ago, but drawing on traditions considerably older, lists specific plant preparations for snakebite management. Among them, Rauwolfia serpentina, literally named for its traditional use against snakebite. The roots were prepared as a paste and applied directly to the wound. Modern pharmacology tested Rauwolfia serpentina and found it contains reserpine, a compound with genuine vasodilatory properties that reduces blood pressure, which means that in a hemotoxic envenomation-causing cardiovascular collapse, this plant was doing something real, not curing the venom, not neutralizing the toxin, but slowing one of the mechanisms by which the venom was killing the patient. Ancient physicians did not know the word reserpine. They did not know what a vasodilator was. They knew that people who received this preparation sometimes survived situations where people who did not receive it died. They passed that observation down for generations, embedded in ritual and text, until modern chemistry arrived to explain why. In 2019, a research team at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi published a systematic review of 10 plant species used in traditional snakebite treatment across South Asia. 37 of them showed measurable activity against snake venom components in laboratory testing. 37. Not all of them, but 37 out of 110 is not luck. That is generations of empirical observation refined into something that partially worked. And partially working, in a situation where the alternative was nothing, was the difference between some people surviving and no people surviving. Here is the thing nobody says out loud about the history of snakebite treatment. The first modern antivenom was developed by Albert Calmet at the Pasteur Institute in Paris in 1895. It worked by injecting a horse with progressively larger doses of venom until the horse's immune system produced antibodies, then extracting those antibodies and purifying them for human use. That method, using the immune response of another animal to generate a protective substance, is conceptually not that different from what certain traditional healers in rural India were doing with snake venom itself for generations. Deliberate, controlled exposure to venom to build resistance. The practitioners who handled venomous snakes regularly in ritual contexts showed measurably different physiological responses to bites than people who had never been exposed. Modern immunology would call this acquired tolerance. Ancient practice called it something else, but both were operating on the same underlying biological reality. Calmet's antivenom saved lives. It still does. But the path from a healer in a forest 3,000 years ago applying a plant paste and offering prayer to a doctor in 2025 calculating antivenom dosage is not a straight line from ignorance to knowledge. It is a conversation across time with ancient observers contributing observations that modern scientists are still extracting value from, that is not romanticizing the past, that is reading the pharmacological literature. Ancient healers tried suction and mostly wasted time. They tried tourniquet application and often made tissue damage worse. They tried scarification, cauterization, and remedies that ranged from mildly useful to actively harmful. They also systematically cataloged plant compounds that modern science has confirmed contain genuinely active molecules. They developed immobilization protocols, keep the patient still, keep the bite site below the heart, that modern emergency medicine still recommends because they slow venom spread through the lymphatic system. They built knowledge transmission systems precise enough to preserve accurate botanical information across 2,000 years of oral and written tradition. Here is the uncomfortable part. We nearly lost all of it. The systematic dismissal of traditional medicine during the colonial period meant that plant knowledge accumulated over millennia was categorized as superstition and ignored. Research that might have accelerated the development of treatments by decades was not done because the people who held the knowledge were not considered credible sources. But here is the twist. The WHO estimates that roughly 5.4 million people are bitten by snakes every year. Up to 138,000 of them die. The majority of those deaths occur in rural South Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. precisely the regions where the traditional botanical knowledge is deepest and where access to modern antivenom is most limited. The knowledge that could help people in those situations most was developed by their own ancestors, and it spent a century being called primitive. Right now, somewhere in the forests of Odisha, a woman whose grandmother taught her which root to prepare, and how is applying a paste to a bite wound that a hospital is 4 hours away from reaching. She does not know the word reserpin. She does not need to. She knows what her grandmother knew, who knew what her grandmother knew, in a line of transmission stretching back further than any written record can confirm. The snake has not changed. The venom has not changed. The distance to the hospital has not changed either. If this completely changed how you think about the people who came before us, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because next time we are asking something that sounds simple but has an answer nobody expects. See you in the next one.